and welcome to Coast Connections. I'm Elizabeth Hines, and I just want to acknowledge that we're broadcasting today from the traditional territories of the Sinemu people here, and we just want to thank them for allowing us to live and learn on their traditional territory. Today, in for a real treat. We've got a wonderful, inspirational story to share with you of the first Indigenous woman in Canada to start her own airline. She's a pilot, she's the CEO of her own company. She was also listed on Maclean's magazine, the 2021 edition of the Power List, people who are shaping the way that we think and learn in this country. And she's also, if that wasn't enough, being featured in a DC comic of real-life Wonder Women. Please welcome Teara Fraser. Hello, Teara.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I think you're at the or near the Vancouver airport doing this interview today.
I am joining you today from Vancouver International Airport, which is the traditional unceded and continually occupied territory of the Musqueam people, and Iskwew Air is very grateful to be here. And in fact, one of our very first orders of business, right after we bought the airplane, was to ask the Musqueam people for their blessing to do business on their territory.
That's very respectful. And is that something that all people should do if we're starting up a new business in our own areas? Is that something that we should do locally?
Well, we decided to have a public ceremony where we asked the Musqueam peoples for their blessing. And, part of the beauty of a public ceremony is to really have people get curious about that, just as you did. What is this blessing ceremony, and why is this important? And so, yes, it's good protocol to ask permission to be on someone's land, to be on someone's territory, and to do business. And in everything that we do, how can we honor Indigenous peoples? How can we honor their ancestors? How can we honor especially the land that has been stolen? And how do we then do, in our daily practices, our business practices, how do we honor? And this is one way, is to acknowledge that the land, just as you did, is stolen, is theirs, is the place where their ancestors have stewarded for thousands and thousands of years and taken care of the land, and do whatever we can to acknowledge our place on it and that history. And for me, it was certainly one. There would have been no other way. There would have been no other way. And interesting, because it did garner a little bit of attention. People did ask, well, what if they said no? Well, then I wouldn't be doing it.
You go different areas to keep asking permission until you were accepted.
Right? Like this isn't it wasn't a performative act. It was an authentic, and it actually caused a little bit of we'll say good trouble, but because we did the ceremony just days after buying the aircraft, so there was a long road until we were ready to launch. But because people are unfamiliar with what a blessing ceremony is, some people did think that was our launch, and they were ready for us to roll out our plans and our announcements. But you don't ask for permission when you're, halfway through or ready to launch. You ask for permission before you begin.
Yeah, except if you're a teenager. Teara, let's talk a little bit about the name that you gave your airline, Iskwew, and I believe that is a Cree word, if you can just let us know.
So Iskwew is a Cree word for woman. And
Mhm.
I'd be delighted to tell you the origin story of the name. Aviation and aerospace is an extraordinarily male-dominated industry.
Yes.
Extraordinarily male-dominated with very little diversity, all the kinds of diversity. And so throughout my career, um, working within that patriarchal system, defeminizing myself certainly in my early years and doing whatever it took to to fit into that world, all the way through. I have a privilege, and it is a privilege, to be able to be at a point in my career where I don't need to worry quite as much about fitting in. I've been disrupting now for a long time and actually don't really care too much about trying to fit into a system that isn't working. So I chose the name mindfully and quite boldly as an act of reclamation of womanhood, reclamation of matriarchal leadership, and reclamation of language. Any marketing expert will tell you, good goodness, never name your business something that people can't say or isn't easy to pronounce. It's one of those marketing no-nos. But it's a reclamation of normalizing that that rule applies to the English language and not to
Mm.
the beauty of all languages and words that are easy to say in some
Yeah.
communities. And so, yes, Iskwew. And right on my tagline of my email and in other materials as well, it just says, P.S. It's not that hard to say. And then, I have a little, way to be able to, spell it out for folks so they can say it. And even if they say it wrong, even if it is hard to say, because it's not super easy to say, it's not that hard, but it's not, not super
Yeah.
easy either, is great. Let's have a conversation just like we are right now about, how do we decenter, colonial, ways of being in the world, and how do we center and amplify and celebrate,
Yeah.
Indigenous languages and voices and knowledge and. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Esqueo was my first Cree word that I learned, but
Ah!
I also hopped onto YouTube to learn something else to say to you today. Tansei Nichiwagan, and I believe
Ah.
that's hello friend.
Yes, thank you. Hi, hi. Wonderful. Good job. Excellent.
Thank you. Now, Tara, you're a pilot. You've been a pilot for over 20 years. You're a private pilot and commercial pilot, obviously. Tell us what inspired you to become a pilot. Was there a pivotal moment? How did that come to be? How did you take to the air?
Yeah, there absolutely was a pivotal moment. And when I was 30 years old, which is 20 years ago now, so everybody knows how old I am in the world. I had to check I have a Wikipedia page, which is really weird. And my daughter, who's also my colleague, is like, did you know there's a Wikipedia page? And I said, no. She said, it says you're 50. Do we not know how old you are? uh, but anyways, yes, at 30, I, was really trying to rediscover who I was and what was possible in the world for me. And very challenging, so many barriers to get there. But I went really on my first trip, and I went to Africa, which is, wow, talk about a transformative land and peoples. And while I was there, I took a flight in a small airplane for the first time. And on that flight, we did a aerial tour over the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And the pilot was banking the aircraft and telling us stories of the land. And we were able to see the world differently from the air. And it was this magnificent experience of truly witnessing the land from the air as a bird would, and this feeling of freedom and vastness. Like from the air is when you realize like how small you are and how big the world is, and also how much of the land is trees and water and rivers and animals and mountains and rocks. And so I decided on that first. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy has the coolest job I've ever seen, and that this is what I want to do. I got down from that flight like, okay, sweetie, honey, let's review. You are you're a single mom with 2 kids. You don't have any post-secondary education. You're 30 years old. You are struggling as a single mom to raise your 2 children, and it's just post 9/11, so there are no jobs. The entire industry is in a shambles, and I talked to myself and said, something like this is just not possible for someone like you and all of your circumstances. And then 2 weeks later, I went second time in a small airplane. I went skydiving. I can tell you everything about the moment when we taxied out. I wanted to touch everything. I wanted to know how everything worked, what everything was for. And as we taxied out, I can tell you everything about this moment when I said, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to fly airplanes. And so I returned.
There was just a knowing within you that was going to be your destiny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just decided. Mm-hmm. I made a decision, right, mm-hmm. to say this is what will happen, and came home to Canada, started my flight training, and in under a year from starting, had a commercial pilot's license in hand.
Congratulations to you. And you also started up an aerial survey company as well. And you're also on the board of directors for the BC Aviation Council as part of your aviation career as well. So you've become a real leader in the aviation field, and stepping into becoming an airline CEO and owner is a completely new territory for most women, especially Indigenous women. And that came to be, you got certified in 2019, I believe it was, Teara?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we received our operating certificate October 1st, 2019.
And I love your tagline for your airline, connecting people with each other and to the land.
Absolutely. Just like when I shared with you that flight where you're, witnessing the land, and, when people are connected to each other, I think all human beings in the world right now are craving to be connected yes. with the land, connected to themselves, connected to each other, connected to something greater.
Wonderful. We've got a picture here of the Sweetgrass Warrior, your Navajo Piper plane.
Yes.
So that's the engine that is connecting you to all the different communities you're going to. And we also have a photo here of your wonderful team that you're working with there at Iskwew Air. Tell us about your Piper Navajo. How big is she, and what's the flight range on her?
Yeah, absolutely. So she is named the Sweetgrass Warrior, and maybe I'll share a little bit about that. Sweetgrass is medicine. For me, it is something that connects me to the earth. Sweetgrass is grounded, but it's also in flow, and so sweetgrass is my medicine, and the idea or the concept of warriorship. I define warriorship as standing fiercely with deep love for what matters. And so that is her name. It's a Piper Navajo chieftain. So, this is a humble start. One small airplane, but we have a big vision. So, we can fly for longer than the human can. because of course it's a small aircraft, so there's no washroom on board. So we're limited by the human beings more than we are the aircraft range itself. But
And it's 8 passengers, I believe, plus 2
yes.
crew. Teara, it's interesting that your plane, your Navajo plane, is named Sweetgrass, and the medicine that is related to that, because during the COVID, you were actually bringing medicine, supplies, staff, and equipment to Indigenous communities throughout BC through what you call your airlift program, which is bringing lift and love to people. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When COVID first hit, of course, I mean, there was so much uncertainty and there was so much fear, especially in communities that really rely on air transportation for critical needs, for medicine, for medical appointments, for supplies. And in particular in this time, everyone was wanting to, how do we get the equipment that we need for our safety, for our protection. And so we launched the Airlift campaign, which was to bring some love and lift into communities. And, it was very important that we do that in a respectful, honoring way and just say, how can we bring some love and lift to your community? And so if a community was interested in receiving a care package, then we asked them, what do you need? What would be honoring and helpful for your community? And so that we were able to bring all kinds of really interesting things. So PPE was on the top of the list at that point. People wanted cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, masks, and all of those things to keep them safe. And then we asked them, what else? What else would be helpful and honoring for your community? And we took gardening supplies, we took security equipment, we took portable toilets for those that were setting up a check-in station to monitor the ins and outs of a community so that they could keep communities safe. We brought fresh produce, and it was a beautiful opportunity to serve. And so we served several different communities, and the needs of communities shifted as we went along. We raised the funds. We did a fundraising campaign to be able to pay for the gas and the supplies. We purchased supplies that weren't donated, as we all should, as often as possible, from Indigenous owned businesses. We brought wellness from Satya Organics, and we brought from Sisters Sage, which is a Indigenous wellness brand. We brought children's books and so much more.
And you even brought a little 2.5-year-old boy home from Children's Hospital who had been medevaced there earlier in the pandemic for health reasons. And you flew him back to his home community up north. I think it was almost a 5-hour flight, and you returned him to his family. So thank you for the heart that you're showing with your airline, Teara. It's very touching. The other thing that you're doing, which is also groundbreaking, is you have an aircraft maintenance component of your company. You're contracting that out. And you have one of the very few women who is an aircraft maintenance person. There's only 2.8% in Canada who actually take that program. And you, Teara, have her on board as your aircraft maintenance manager.
Aren't I blessed? Aren't I blessed?
And she is also a woman. May I add, she's also a woman of color. So you're breaking ground all over the place.
Absolutely. We were very proud to launch our aircraft maintenance organization on March 11th. And we chose that date because March 11th, 1971, the very first aircraft maintenance engineer in Canada was certified. Can you imagine? And yes, 2.8% of aircraft maintenance engineers in Canada are women, and less than 5% are women of color.
Wonderful. again, breaking ground. And you're also looking after Mother Earth, like your carbon offsets. You're purchasing those to go towards supporting the Great Bear Rainforest as well, the 6.5 hectare area of land in the Kitimat-Stikine area of BC. Tell us how you're helping out there.
Well, it's a challenging thing because we need airplanes, and we need airplanes as they are now, and we also understand the footprint that is left. So it's our responsibility to do everything we can to walk more softly on Mother Earth. So each and every flight is carbon offset. With those contributions going into the Great Bear Rainforest, which is an Indigenous-led initiative right here, as you said, in British Columbia. We're also Climate Smart certified, which is recent, so it's actually not even up anywhere. So one of the first to know, and beyond that, we're really mindfully involved in the ecosystem of the sustainable transportation of the future. So I've come to understand Iskwew Air as a bridge between traditional air transportation and the transportation of the future. And this isn't new. I'm a Métis woman, so I find myself a bridge between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, and here I am finding myself as a bridge between, what was and what is and what could be in the future. So Iskwew Air is a founding member of the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium, and looking at a zero emission future for air transportation. And my belief that together we can reimagine, rematriate, and rebuild an air transportation sector that centers equity, resilience, and most importantly, sustainability.
I love how you bring your worldview and your traditional views to the values of Iskwew Air. I think it's very powerful how you're combining the two, and also with emerging technologies, you're right there on the leading edge with that as well, with some of the remote types of aircraft or travel that we're going to be doing.
Yes.
So good for you, Teara. You're quite the little force to be reckoned with. I want to talk about how you came to be selected for DC Comics graphic novel. You were one of 18 women selected to be featured in there for Wonder Women, like modern day Wonder Women, because of the work that you're doing to help others soar. And you were amongst luminaries such as Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg, pardon me, Ruth, and Beyonce the singer, just to name two. But tell us how that came to be and how you got that call.
Yeah, and AOC and Serena Williams, and it's absolutely wild. So, and an honor. I received a call from the illustrator who said that the writer had selected me as one of 18 Wonder Women of history that represent, justice. And I don't know, I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. And she said, "Can I interview you? And we'll have an illustrator." And but actually, when they made the announcement, and I really started to understand, what was happening and the incredible change makers that I would be featured alongside. It was wild and surreal, and still hard to believe. The graphic novel comes out in September, and so I can't wait to celebrate that and to see it, because I have no idea what it looks like. There's a couple of images that were part of the release, and so and it's pretty cool.
That is very cool. You're not only a pilot with wings, you're a pilot with a superwoman cape as well. So congratulations to you. You are taking on so many diverse issues and roles, and you're just such an inspiration to women and to Indigenous people and to everybody, Teara. What you're doing to build communities is really remarkable. And I'm really humbled to hear about all this that you're doing. I think I need to get out there and start hustling myself. Tell us about some of the most rewarding aspects of your business at this present time.
I'm super proud of Alicia Sopal, who is our director of maintenance. And it's just such a joy to watch her build that part of our business and be an inspiration for others. And I'm so excited about that. And I'm really proud and excited about our role in the future of transportation and our engagement with the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium. And I'm super excited. We're working on a project right now to specifically look at how can these emerging technologies, RPAS or drones and advanced air mobility, zero emission, autonomous aircraft of the future. How can these technologies specifically uplift Indigenous land story, sovereignty, and stewardship? How can these technologies serve Indigenous peoples, communities, and initiatives? And I'm like so excited about being a part of that.
That's wonderful. And I just want to add so our viewers know, right now you're doing charter travel with Iskwew Air, but you're also in the process of doing community consultation with communities in the BC region to have regular flight service there. So your community outreach work is underway as we speak. As COVID, restrictions are lifted and your routes are put in place, you'll be able to have your service accessed by many, many more people.
I hope so. Yes.
Teara.
Yes.
Yeah. We only have about a minute left, Teara. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up today?
I just want to express my gratitude for your interest in our story and in amplifying the voices of Indigenous peoples. I think in this transformational moment of reconciliation and what is possible with that, making space for amplifying the incredible voices, worldview, and wisdom of Indigenous peoples, all Indigenous peoples, is one of the most important things that we can do is that and really step into reconciliation and truly honor Indigenous peoples and their land.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Teara. It's been a real honor for me to get to know you on screen here and learn more about your values and your airline and all the other endeavors that you have underway. It's been a real honor. So while we close here, can you teach me again how to say thank you in Cree?
It was just hi.
Hi.
Is the more relaxed way. Hi, and I hold my hands up to you. Mm.
Hi to you, Teara. Thank you so much for joining us today on Coast Connections. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
A pleasure.
And thank you to our viewers for joining us here on this episode of Coast Connections. We're helping with Teara's airline to connect people to the land and to each other. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Coast Connections.